and welcome back to Exploring Imperator Rome. My name is Corine Gerritsen, and in this series we're playing some of the game as well as look at the representation of different cultures. Last time I showed you barbaric Britain, but this time we're going back to the Mediterranean to a place what was once known as Phoenicia. We're going to the city Byblos, which is a very ancient city. It was already named in Egyptian hieroglyphs in 2600 before Common Era. But archaeological remains tell us that humans have lived there even prior. So how does this translate into the game? As I know by now, we can only start in 305 before Common Era, so that will be no different today. When we click on Byblos, it tells us a couple of things. First of all, it is a city-state. And secondly, it has a specific heritage. One of the oldest cities in the known world, Byblos has been the home of Phoenician maritime kingdoms for longer than most other countries have even been populated. And it is from here that many of the settlers that founded the Great Punic towns in the western Mediterranean originated. Anyway, time to get the show on the road. We are Byblos, a city-state that has as an overlord the Canaanite Empire, which is huge as you can see. You might be wondering why the state is called Byblos and the city is called Gebal. Well, Byblos is the Greek name and Gebal is the Phoenician name, so apparently they wanted to use both names. By the way, time to disclaim, this video has a ton of names I have no hope of pronouncing right, so I'm sorry for that and please bear with me. Anyway, we are a tribune for the Antagonists and we cannot declare wars on our own, or even fabricate claims at this point. Our government form is an autocratic monarchy. This makes sense. We know that Phoenician cities had kings for centuries, and we know quite some of the names actually, since they have been preserved in, you guessed it, inscriptions. In the 6th century before Common Era, they were sometimes experimenting with government forms. Usually during and straight after Alexander the Great, kings would remain in office but usually had a governor alongside from their overlords. The culture is, luckily, not 100% the same, with 95% Levantine, both Phoenician 80% and Hebrew 20% and 5% Aramaic. The religion is Canaanite 80% and Jewish 20%. Since we are very close to where Judaism is a majority, this is also why we can embrace Judaism as a decision. Here we have Levantine and Arabian traditions, mostly things you could expect, like desert sands, fighting in the desert, Macedonian phalanx as legacy of Alexander, quite a focus on camels, and mercenaries. And here we have the standard technologies. In our diplomacy tab we have a mercantile stand, which is also not very surprising. Phoenicians were widely known for their trade. Now it is time to look at some of the gods. Our deity of war is El, who was the supreme god, also the creator and was the father of most gods. He was very important, but was not specifically tailored as a god of war. His daughter Enat and possibly his son Kermosh had way stronger associations with war. I think this is similar to what we've seen at Delphi. There, the most important god, Apollo, was the deity of war, without being specifically a god of war. Now the supreme god, El in this case, is also the deity of war. Baal of culture, most considered him a fertility deity and one of the most important gods in the pantheon. His title was Prince or Lord of the Earth. He was also called the Lord of Rain and Dew, the two forms of moisture that were indispensable for the fertile soil in Canaan. In Phoenician, he was called Baal Shaman, Lord of the Heavens. Maybe he's used here as a deity of culture because of all of his famous temples, but he seems to have more ties to fertility. Here we have Baalat, the goddess of economy. She was the chief deity of Byblos, but very little is known about her. She's basically known as the Lady of Byblos. And then there's Astarte of fertility. She was in fact the goddess of fertility, sex, love and war, so that makes sense. We know the names of these gods, sometimes because of inscriptions, but also because they are mentioned in the Old Testament or the Hebrew scriptures. It doesn't always tell us what these gods are known for, however, as is the case with Baalat. This way we also know the gods we can replace them with, which are all Canaanite gods. I think this is a bit strange, because Etruria, also active in trade, could get way more gods, also non-italic ones. You would expect a city with a port to be similar, because trade facilitates contact, and this could bring new gods. Compare this to the idea of cross-cultural influence. Not only one side is receiving and the other giving, exchange happens. I'm not saying they would have been likely to switch gods, but if you give the option for a lot of other countries, why not for this one? The only option here is to embrace Judaism. I have chosen the god of economy to venerate and bought the hell out of the inventions, so my civilization and tech levels are rising very quickly. I'm gonna super speed everything. I'm gonna keep upgrading my cities, and after 4 years, war breaks out between Egypt and the Antigonid Kingdom. Shocker, right? 2 years later, they are still fighting. Egypt conquers a part and they apparently killed a very few people living here, since it is a desert. So this piece of land is now deserted. Get it? And available for colonization. And to be able to do that, you need to have 10 population in the neighboring province. And since I have a big city right next to it, it was easy to take it over. So now I have found a way to expand. And make no mistake, I am supposed to expand my territory. Make sure that Syria is brought under our influence one way or the other. There's absolutely no way at this point I can take on the Antigonid Empire. So I decided to play the waiting game and watch the Ptolemies, Seleucids and Antigonids go at each other's throats. Time to look at our government. For some reason I did not start by looking at our main king, the Suffete, but started at the other offices, which helped me in the end. Some of these titles were giving me an absolute headache. While Chancellor and Royal Tutor are pretty straightforward, Mefaket is not. Usually you can Google it and it gives you an idea. Well, not this time. At least not for me. Only pages of Imperator Rome itself were showing up. Well, and this one Word document. It stated, I was really surprised, honored and a little made Mefaket, which loosely translates from the very ancient Hebrew to completely freaked out. This gave me an idea to look at an ancient Hebrew dictionary. I tried to spell it from phonetically back to Hebrew letters, looked 3 varieties up in the dictionary, and quite some time later I finally had it. Mefaket, a male commander. This is a title, but not necessarily a political office. It is mentioned in the Old Testament and describes the position here pretty well. When I knew it was a Hebrew word, I at least knew where to look, and I could find the other offices easier. In Jewish religious law, a shomer is a Jewish legal guardian entrusted with the custody and care of another's object. Kahen loosely translates to priest and is a religious role. Prophet literally means doctor. Now I've sold these and they all make sense and the definition fits the role. Then, back to the most important role, the Suffete. I am familiar with the term because Livy reports that the government of ancient Carthage was headed by a pair of annually elected Suffetes. In Phoenicia they are also attested. But because I knew now to pay more attention to the Hebrew history of the word, I discovered the expression is used to describe the leaders of the Jewish people in the biblical book of Judges. Shoptim, a judge, one who presides over a court of law. The title was well known in the towns along the eastern shore of the Mediterranean. Probably the Suffetes were originally representatives of the king, but later this informal title became a well-defined office. I think because of this one, a well-attested office that is also present in Hebrew text, made for the other terms to be also named as offices here. They are all titles that can be found in the Tanakh. We don't really know whether these offices could carry these names, and in this game it might be an educated guess. The Suffete was right, so maybe the others also use these terms. Phoenician and Hebrew are apparently two very close related languages, so they might use the same words. Hebrew text survived in much bigger numbers than Phoenician one, and that's why we know more Hebrew words. Anyway, have you noticed anything about the portraits in the game? A lot of characters, mostly women, are wearing very bright purple clothes. This is no coincidence. In our capital we have a surplus of dyes, which is actually known as Tyrian purple or Phoenician red. It is a reddish purple natural dye produced by sea snails, which I'm now reading are predatory. It was a very expensive and sought after color and Romans also absolutely loved it. Given these clothes do not look red purple to me, but I still believe this is supposed to be Phoenician purple. Might this also be the reason why Byblos is purple on the map, or is this a coincidence? Into the game files we go. And here we can see that they specifically chose this color for Phoenicia and this one for Byblos. So this is probably related. Because this is once again not really interesting to see in super speed since not a whole lot is happening, I decided to dig around in the character names once again. It was very interesting to me that one name did not appear in the name pool. The name of our king, of our Suffete. First and last name both. Aina Ainelit. The only guy older than 35. So I wanted to know why. In Byblos, the long reign of Osbaal was followed by a short reign of Urimiel III around 350. He still belonged to the same dynasty founded by Osbaal, a priest's son who helped the clergy to maintain their grip on political power. He was replaced by Ainel, a king of the same dynasty, and his reign was probably quite long and was terminated in 333. So this was actually an historical figure, even though at this point in time he should be dead. But we don't have the name of the guy that should be here right now, so I think they decided to go with Eine for this reason. And usually at this point I would also like to tell you what's on the flag. We've reached out to Imperator Rome because I do not know, but I haven't heard anything yet. Working theories are maybe it's a Gorgon's head or a Baalat Gebal, thanks to Eris. But if you can solve this mystery, please leave a comment, because I simply do not know. As I said, we know this is a very old city, and archaeological digs have been performed here since 1860. The first one to do this was Erne Renan, and I want to reflect on this. We now perform archaeological research in a bit different way than back in the day. Archaeologists used to be focusing on certain objects and certain time periods and would discard some of the material they did not deem worthy, while nowadays archaeologists chant context is everything. And usually the digs are better documented and things like pottery shards are regarded as very important, and we try to get the entire picture. Renan, however, set out to look for evidence from the biblical period, so that we have living things before our eyes and not those pale, lifeless phantoms that are Jesus, Mary, Peter, etc. We have shifted to an abstract state and become completely typified. And secondly, he is very preoccupied with Greek art, which was regarded as the highest form of art, not only by him, but also by a lot of others. These ideas might not have started with, but it grew exponentially after Johann Winkelmann published his book. As a result, we see Renan undervaluating Phoenician art constantly. He calls it imitative art, above all industrial, which never rose for their greatest public moments, to a style that was at once elegant and lasting. So unfortunately, we may have lost some Phoenician evidence because of the ideas and practices in the first archaeological digs. So, what happened to me? Because of continuous wars, I was steadily adding new territory, and the rest of the time I was building cities and filling up my city slots. After 75 years, I called quits, but we've learned a few lessons. First of all, the Antigonid Empire has more to worry about than us, so we weren't being integrated into their empire or anything. We weren't even asked to join their wars. And secondly, we had all the time in the world to upgrade things and build cities, and this way we could easily colonize part of the desert and just build new cities there. And thirdly, I would like to add, it is actually possible to form Phoenicia as Byblos, because I saw that someone actually did it. Well, that concludes our look into Byblos. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you all next time in Exploring Imperator Rome.